My name is Ncazelo Ncube, and I work for REPSSI, which is a regional psychosocial support initiative that works in 13 countries in East and Southern Africa. REPSSI works with its partners in trying to find tools and ideas of supporting children, families and communities that have undergone a lot of difficulties as well as trauma. The DVD that you're about to see was developed with the support of the Dulwich Centre. It is a tool called the Tree of Life that embraces a lot of narrative practices that ensure safety and second story development. The Tree of Life is a tool that has got 4 parts. The first part of the Tree of Life invites children to thinking and reflecting about their lives in ways that allows them to be in touch with their knowledges, their skills, and their hopes for their lives. The second part of the Tree of Life is about the Forest of Life. And in the Forest of Life, children join together in seeing the richness of their lives, in acknowledging the dreams that they have, the skills that they have, and really just celebrating the beauty of their lives. The third part of the Tree of Life is about the storms of life. This gives children an opportunity to reflect and to think about the problems and the challenges that they experience in life, but this is done in a safe way that allows them to also think about the skills and the knowledges that they have that can support them in dealing with these challenges. And in the fourth part of the Tree of Life exercise, children celebrate the new knowledges that they've come to be connected with, the relationships that they have with their families and caregivers, and they are awarded and acknowledged and honored by being given a certificate. The exercise ends with a song and a celebration of life. I'm very grateful to have this opportunity to share the Tree of Life with you as a group. I think it has been a very important project for me in my own personal development, but also in terms of the work that I do at REPSSI. And I think it will be important for me to start off by giving you just a bit of background in terms of how we came to be working on the Tree of Life. Those of you who may know, before I joined REPSSI, I worked for Masiye Camp for a very long time. I worked in Masiye Camp as a child psychologist for about 3 years, during which I had a lot of opportunity to work with children who'd come to the life skills camps. So we'd have children coming to the camps that would spend time with, talking about issues of loss and bereavement, and just trying to support them in terms of coping and moving on with their lives. So that brought a whole world of knowledge and information, but I also think what it did is it brought quite a lot of dilemmas and challenges even in the context of our work. And I think I would like to share those with you so that you can appreciate the value that working on a tool such as this one has contributed in terms of developing our work. Working with the children was very exciting. Obviously, when you are aware that in your community you have children who have difficulties, and I think all of us come with that understanding and that knowledge. And being placed in the position of being the child psychologist at the camp, there's almost an expectation that you should have the answers to equip the youth counselors and the young people that are working, supporting the children. And I think that puts a lot of strain, if I may use that word. You know, there's a lot of pressure on you to know what is important for children. And so you have a young people that are saying, yes, we are camp counselors, yes, we want to support the children, but we need you to help us to do that.
you should have the knowledge because you studied psychology and you're a psychologist. So I remember in that experience having a lot of problems and challenges. And how do I do this? What do I give these young people that could help them to do what I know they really want to do? So we experienced quite a lot of challenges. And I think obviously the times when the children would come to the camp, those were very exciting and lovely times. I mean, the kids had an opportunity to come and to be together. For some of the children, just having the experience to leave home and to take a breather from their day-to-day difficult realities of taking care of ill parents, poverty, and just the opportunity to come to an environment like a camp was obviously very exciting for the children. And we knew that somehow we were contributing to the lives of children, by allowing that space and opportunity for them to come together, to play together, to have fun, to sit around and share stories and realize that they're actually not on their own. There are many other children in their situations, and hearing from the children, they say that is a very helpful understanding to arrive at. That it is just not about you and something, you being cursed, that's why you are an orphan, and that's why you've lost your parents, but there are many more other children. So I think the experience at the camp really provided that opportunity for many children in Zimbabwe and perhaps outside of Zimbabwe. But I think in our work, we always had questions about how sustainable what our efforts were in the lives of the children. Because you're thinking about, yes, I saw these children run, I saw them have fun, sing, and join together in groups, but we know that they're going to go back home to their families and their communities that we do not know and we have not seen. What does it mean for a child to experience such an uplifting, perhaps, to have such an uplifting experience and then go back perhaps to the abuse or to being misunderstood, and somehow what we are doing with them is not assisting to connect them back to their families. It is not reaching the family and the community setting. And so those things continue to challenge us in our work, to say, how sustainable can what you do with a child isolated from his family or community be in terms of long-term coping? That was obviously our goal. So those were some of the questions and dilemmas that we had, and working with young people who were serving in the camp as counselors. Most of the young people themselves being orphan children, we have gone through loss and bereavement, and wanting to reach out to their peers, to say, I've been through it and I want to support you. And you can see the levels of commitment and love for their work and wanting to offer and to stretch out their hand to reach out to others who are going through, more or less similar situations in life. But also, I think, observing and looking at the young people and somehow getting the sense that they did not seem themselves to be managing their lives, to be having a sense of a hope for the future, having a sense of, taking certain actions to make their lives better. At least one of the things I can remember is how the young people who were camp counselors often preferred to be at the camp than going back home. So you will actually have a camp where you're expected to have about 20 camp counselors, but you'll find that so many more want to come back. And then you are saying, but what is wrong with being at home? What is wrong with being in the community? What is it that they are finding at camp? But obviously a camp is a structure. It's not a family environment. It is meant to be receiving different children at different times. So the expectation is that there are only meant to be a certain number of children within the camp. And after the camp, you go home. If you're a camp counselor, if you've played a part in another camp, perhaps you need to go home and let other camp counselors come in. So these are some of the dilemmas and the questions that we began to have in our work, to say, clearly, there seems to be something that is missing in our work. As wonderful as the work may be, as valuable as it may be, there seems to be something else that needs to be happening in the lives of children. But also just to add the fact that even in the group work that we'd be doing with the children, I think we came from a point where we'd have children sharing their stories about their losses and what they've gone through in their lives. And I think those were difficult times. I mean, Spelile is here, and I think she can testify to some of that experience of almost having children collectively wailing, you know? Children are crying, they are telling their stories, and you have an experience where it's almost a mourning day, you know? The whole camp, it's sad because there's this group work that's taking place in the camp, and the children are talking about their experiences, and you can almost feel the heaviness that is in the air. And camp counselors, the young people working with the children, those supporting the camp counselors, people are just drained of energy, you know? And so it's part of that, and then beginning to really say, is that it? Is this what we are all about, or is this what we should be all about, you know? And I know that the times that we were engaging in such practices, our belief was that if we let children express their feelings, talk about their reality, somehow they are healed. Okay? So we were at the point in our work where we were actually feeling that providing that opportunity to say that story is in itself healing and transporting for a child. So we would engage in these practices with the hope that this is what it means for the children. But again, as you reflect and look at it, you worry about it, because you get signs that the children are still at the camp, they're still having nightmares. I mean, you'll have children sleeping in dormitories and they're talking about experiences of having nightmares or frightening experiences, and there's bedwetting. So even after those experiences within the groups, it provided an opportunity for some to be heard, but I think we were not clear about whether we had actually achieved what we hoped to achieve with the children, because the signs of the problems that they're having in their lives sort of never went away. So I think, this is kind of sort of the background, and in terms of the working experience. And I'm just thinking about my initial experiences with narrative ideas, when it opened up sort of a door to beginning to understand that there are alternative ways of working with children. And I think it brought me back to my own context, my own experience of work, and really feeling challenged to say, how could we do it differently? How could we review our practices? And how can we be supported to ensuring that we really help the way that we so much desire to do so? So I remember my initial experiences and hearing issues around an alternative story, beginning to understand that certain practices are re-traumatizing, and that when children are asked to just retell a single story, it has potential to be re-traumatizing for them. So it is just some of those initial ideas that I experienced that sort of really challenged and sort of pushed me and brought in a sense of desperation in terms of, I feel I've heard something that can add value to my work or to our work. And this is what led, to the conversations that I had with the Dulwich Centre to say, could you come up and support our work? But at Masiye Camp, we had an experience with the Tree of Life. I was involved in a project where we were developing a tool for having conversations with communities, and part of that project involved using the Tree of Life to sort of gather messages and themes from the children and the different groups that we were meeting. So having experienced that tool there, I really liked it, and I felt, let me take it back to Masiye Camp and let's see what we can do with it. And so we tried it out. I think Masiye Camp tried out the tool for about a year. I will gradually explain what the tree of life as a metaphor stands to do. But when we are looking at a tree, I'm sure all of us have seen trees. I think we can look around outside through the window. There are trees everywhere, isn't it? Particularly being in this environment, in this country that is so green and full of life. So there are so many trees there. So we had this idea of trying to represent your life in the form of a tree, you know, using the metaphor or the idea that think of your life as a tree. You know, a tree has got roots, it's got a trunk, it's got leaves, it's got branches, it's got fruit. And how all the different parts of a tree can begin to speak about your experiences in life, your history, and so on. When Dulwich Centre visited us at Masiye Camp last year, they had the opportunity to witness the Tree of Life being used by the young people in the context of a camp, in the context of group counseling. And it was that experience that, you know, David and Cheryl sitting in began to have ideas. In as much as they're participating with us here and beginning to have ideas and supporting our work in different ways, that they kind of began to have ideas about how the Tree of Life could perhaps be different in a way that would bring in some of the narrative ideas, some of which we've explored in this particular process. So this is somehow how it all began. And at that particular point, I was expected to do a project for my diploma program in narrative therapy, and Cheryl said, I think at the airport, it would be great trying to copy Cheryl. If you're trying to do the Tree of Life. I'm sure at that point she just said it, and I think she didn't realize it actually planted the seed in me. And so she went off. So I remained behind, I remained sort of reflecting and thinking through, and at that point, the ideas were not really sort of put together. But I remember a correspondence between David and myself, and he sharing some of the reflections that he had on the Tree of Life, and then just, you know, jumping into the opportunity and grabbing the opportunity to see how this would work with children. So I then embarked on it as a project, on the Tree of Life as a project, trying to engage, to put these narrative ideas. And I think you can see behind me, there are beautiful photographs of children in Soweto who played a very significant role in terms of shaping what the Tree of Life has become today. So we went at this together as a team with the children, and we tried out the ideas, and it was a marvelous experience, I think, as you can see from here. So I think the essence of this sharing really is just to give you a bit of the background in terms of where the idea is coming from, and so that you can also appreciate a bit further in terms of the value that it has added to the work. So to start off what I've done here, I've written out on that flip chart some prompts in terms of thinking about your life as a tree and what we would actually think about. So as I've written here, you see that when we come to the roots, when we think of our lives as a tree, we have roots, we have a trunk, we have all the different parts of the tree. When we come to the roots, we're inviting you to think about where you come from, your family, where does it come from, your history, your ancestry, your extended family, and those people that have taught you in your life, you know, people that have helped you, that have taught you in your life. Who are these significant figures, all right? So when you draw the roots of your tree, you will have these in mind, And you can begin to actually, as you draw, write them and write out sort of mini parts of your story. All right? And then when it comes to the ground, it represents where you live at present and some of the activities that you're actually engaged in your daily life. So where do you live and what are you doing on your day-to-day life? And then the trunk, your skills, your abilities, your competences, and also, and for example, when you talk about your skills and your competences, we're not just thinking about your hardcore skills related to whether you're a good gardener or you can make clothes or you can cook. But I think they are very important skills that we need to appreciate in our lives. And this could be, you know, your ability to care for others, your ability to share, to care, acts of kindness, managing your life, and so forth. So we are looking also for the soft skills, but the skills that are very important in one's life. And then when it comes to the branches, I want you to think about your hopes and your dreams, your wishes, and the direction that you see your life going, or the direction that you would want your life to go. And when it comes to the leaves, just to have an opportunity to think about the important people in your life, you know? The people that you value, the people that you hold precious in your life. And these may be people that have passed away, or people who are living, but people that, when you think of, you know, your heart is really warmed because they are so important and precious to you. And then the fruits of the tree, about the gifts that you have received from people. What kind of gifts? If you to look at your life and the gifts that you've received, what kind of gifts can you think about? And again, it's just not the hardcore gifts. It can be gifts of being cared for, being supported, and being loved, and so on. So at this particular time, I would like to give you that experience. And once we have done that, I've asked Pelile to volunteer to share her tree, and then maybe we can, because Pelile stands for Masiye Camp, you see, so I think it's important that she's a part of this history. Yeah, so she's going to share with us her tree, and then we will see how we're trying to use narrative ideas in the context of her sharing. Is that okay? Can we invite Pelile to take us through her tree? Okay.
Welcome, this is my tree. My ground, where I live right now, I live in our family house in Queenspark in Bulawayo in Zimbabwe. And my day-to-day activities, I work for Masiye Camp. And I'm also studying, but I just finished last semester, hopefully. And if I pass, then. And I'm also taking care of our household. I live with my dad and 2 of my sister's children. And I also spend some time with friends. And my roots, I was born in Chinoi, which is in Mashonaland part of Zimbabwe. But my family is originally from Rimba. But I grew up in Dulwich. So my family has really moved from different parts. And I'm a Sokomrewa, which is like our totem. And it's in Ndebele they say it's Ncube. But you know how our totems are associated with certain animals. Mm-hmm.
But you're not related to me.
I'm not related to Ncazelo. Just the totem does the same.
So it's a monkey.
Yeah. For those who don't understand, it's a monkey. Yeah, and it also says a lot about Soko and Ncube women because they are known to be very strong and very talkative. And I'm totally the opposite. And the people in my life who have taught me, my mom, she was a very strong and hardworking woman. And there was a woman called Miss Malemani. She used to be our, you know, at church you have this Sunday school. So she was our Sunday school teacher. And she's one woman who just always encouraged us to love unconditionally. She would just encourage us to love. So those are like 2 people who were really in my life as I was growing up. My trunk, my skills, I know I have skills in caring. I have skills in managing my life. I'm sure I'm doing a good job in that. And I have skills in working hard. I work very hard, I think, because most of the times I'm at work, I'm at school, I'm doing all sorts of things at the same time. And I also manage my finances very well. And I operate on a shoestring budget, but I still manage. And I also have lots of skills in encouraging people. I always feel like if I can't do something, it doesn't mean that everyone else doesn't have to do it. So I really know I have a skill in trying to encourage people.
And maybe if I can just come in there, just when you're talking about your skills in caring and managing life and working hard and maintaining a very good budget, you know, just interested if you don't mind sharing about the history of those skills and when did you develop the skills? Is it something new or something that you've always had with you?
I think it's something I've always had with me because, especially when it comes to managing my life and my finances, I went to a boarding school and you'd have like a very small budget for the whole school term, but I would manage to make sure that by the time the school term ends, I still have a bit to be able to pay for my bus fare to go back home. So it was always, but I think I'm sure it comes from my mother because, when we were growing up at first, my family was not doing very well, but she always managed to make sure that we have a good life, we have a good education, we're comfortable, and yet she had a very tiny budget and she would squeeze it, and she would make sure she had very few clothes, but she would wash them often, iron them often, and make sure that she looks very pretty in them. So she would always teach us some of those things. So I think I'm sure that's where that comes from.
And what do you think your mother would, if she was here, just to experience you sharing that these are the skills that you have right now in your life, what do you think that would mean for her?
I sometimes think that she actually didn't know that we appreciated this because, when you're kids, you're always whining and complaining. And I think hearing this would be so encouraging for her because I don't think she ever thought that this is what she's doing for us. For her it was like her role, and for her it was like something normal that a mother is supposed to do, but she never really, I'm sure she'd be so encouraged and so moved.
Thank you.
And I move on to my dreams. One of my dreams is to work for the UN and influence policy, especially policy around children's issues, because sometimes I think they go so wrong, and I hope no one is from the US. And my other hope is to marry a faithful man. I can't stand men who are not faithful. One of my other hopes and dreams is to see my sisters empowered. I come from a family where we are 4 girls, and sometimes I just feel like I've been fortunate that I've been able to, I was quite academic, so I've been able to excel, and my sisters have not been that fortunate. So that's my dream really, and I keep on encouraging them to just do something about their lives, and so that's one of my dreams, and I hope one day to come true that they would also have a very comfortable life.
Yeah, so have you always been somebody who's been concerned about children? I heard you talking about how you want to work for the UN and influence policies for children, but also wanting something better for your sisters.
I've always been like that. I think, I don't know if it's natural, if there's anything like that, but I've always been like that, and I've always been, for me, my life, we're always happy. And in my family, we would always, even if we would struggle here and there, but I would always be happy. And that's something that I would really want for most children. And I struggle a lot if I see my sisters not doing well, because I know that will affect their children's lives and their children can grow up without what we had. So, yeah, I think that's... And my leaves, I have my dad, who is the main man in my life. And yeah, he's a very funny character. He's he drinks, but when he does, he's not violent and all. He's always very happy, and he loves to sing and dance. And he's just one of those nice dads to have around. And my mom, I think I spoke a lot about her. She's still a part of my life, even if she's late, because I think some of her memories and values just remained with us. And I have lots of very loving and caring friends. I just never get to a point where I feel like I'm alone. Now I have the refers, and all these people just added to my life. So I think that's such a blessing. And other people in my life, I have my brothers and sisters who are a very close family, very tightly knit, and yeah, those are the people in my life. And my fruits, the fruits that I've been given, education, yeah, my parents did quite a good job. And encouragement, I think that's something that I was given. And knowledge on the importance of family. And I think this really came from my parents. I think I mentioned earlier that our house was always full. And for my dad, if you just have the same surname with us, you're already a relative and you're living with us. So I think that's really something that up to now is very important for me. And love and endurance. I'm a very loving person, and I mean, being a Zimbabwean, I've enjoyed a lot. There's a beard. I think that I got from being a Zimbabwean. And I also have a good relationship with God. So yeah, those are some of the gifts that I've received.
And the gifts that you've received of loving and caring and endurance, why do you think the people gave you the gifts that they gave you? What is it about you that perhaps could have prompted them to give you those gifts?
Oh yeah, I forgot another gift, which is a good smile. I have a very good smile. I smile a lot. I smile when I'm nervous. I smile when I'm scared. I smile all the time. So yeah, I think that's also. But why they gave me this gift? I think for my parents, to some extent, they thought that it was, I mean, they have to do this because they are our parents. But I think also, I've heard people who have, just loved me. I think I'm also a loving person, I hope. And I think, I can't really think of why these people gave me this gift. You mean like what they saw in you?
What they saw in you, what is it about you, perhaps, that they would have seen that would have made them want to give you these gifts?
Maybe that I'm a strong character and that I would be able to try and find opportunities to transfer these gifts. I don't know, maybe that's why they gave me. And I think, maybe it's just the whole spirit of transference. I'm giving, sometimes a bit too giving, but but I think it was, they would know, or maybe they felt that I would be able to transfer them to other people.
And if you think about it, what gifts do you think you've given them in their lives?
Pride. I've given my family, my parents, my relatives a lot of pride. Pride in who we have become. And I've also given a lot of love and a lot of encouragement to people around me. And I think joy as well. Yeah, because I hate sadness. I don't like seeing people unhappy. So wherever I am and whenever I have people around me, I try to make sure that people are happy. I think I've given them joy as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Sven.
Pelile is someone that I know, and I think as she was sharing the tree, and I could see her sort of, when you almost have a vision of somebody on a journey and getting to other places, and I think that was so moving, particularly the fact that maybe I also know some of her personal struggles, and in my head what was going on was just hers beginning to speak into certain things that she was talking about in the tree, and how that could be touching her life at that particular moment. So it moved me a lot, just even seeing her, sort of lighting up and getting to certain realizations and sharing some stories from another point of view. As I've said, it's just somebody that I know quite a lot, and we've shared a lot of stories, so I was very moved by that. Yeah. The Tree of Life process is a 4-part process. And what we've been doing with the drawing of the trees and having somebody share, the children, if you can imagine, share their, write their trees down. It's part of the first process, and having this retelling, where children have that opportunity to come and to share their trees, with each other, and with you listening in, and providing more or less a certain scaffold, allowing, helping children to get to a certain place in terms of even appreciating their lives and what they have, and so on. And I think one of the things that I would want to invite you to think about is what this would mean for a child. I think the experience that we've just witnessed, and the experience that we had also doing our own trees, if we think about the children that we're working with, what would it mean for them to have this opportunity to acknowledge something different about their lives? Because the entry point, if you realize what makes this Tree of Life different, is not problems. It's not struggles. But it's almost a celebration of some of the good things that we have in our lives, and acknowledging and honoring relationships, and coming to an understanding that we do have skills. We have things that we have, and just imagining what it means for children to be at this particular point in terms of their own realization and understanding about their lives and their relations, and that there are people who've cared, and that they have a history, they have a background. I don't know what you think, but I imagine it would be an amazing experience for children who are constantly in touch or aware of the fact that their lives are difficult, that they are orphans, that they are refugees, that they've been formerly abducted. And I think this gets us thinking a lot about issues of creating sort of islands of safety, as sometimes Michael would call it, helping children to stand in a different space, in a different position in relation to the problem. This is not to say they don't have problems. And I think when we actually go to the other parts of the Tree of Life, you will realize that we begin to unpack and to explore with the children some of the challenges that they experience in life. But if you look at what it means for them to have an initial experience of something different before they can look at some of the problems and challenges. Part 2 is about the Forest of Life. And the Forest of Life is about us taking our trees and putting them together. We're going to use that back wall, masking tape. So on your way out to lunch, could you just stick your papers on the wall, and so that we can have a beautiful forest of lovely trees. Thank you. Oh, they've taken my candles. So what we had done before we went away was we'd put our trees on the wall and we'd created almost what we could call the forest. And I can see from here what a beautiful forest we have out there. Huh? Lovely trees, very colorful, very bright, that we have at the back. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to provide an opportunity for all of us to have a chance, okay, to go to a tree that is not yours, but probably you know the person that is, I assume you will be knowing, and just write some words of encouragement and support. This is what would happen with the children. After they've had an opportunity to share their trees and to share their stories together, then they will put their trees up to create this forest of life. And then, obviously, as Pelile was sharing, we were all, hearing her story, but there are certain things about Pelile that we got to know, isn't it? Her skills, her abilities, and just, appreciating what we've come to know and to acknowledge about her life. And then the children would have an opportunity to do that, to write words of encouragement, words of support, about each other and so forth. So I'm thinking this group, we already know each other, we've spent some time together, and I'm sure we have lovely things to say about each other. Am I right or wrong? Asking children how they experience having other people respond to their stories and acknowledge certain things about their lives, I learned from the children that they felt was very special, very, very special, and having a sense of being acknowledged, of being honored, of hearing something good about yourself from other people, and being sort of reinforced, And I think it's, if you look during the Tree of Life exercise, the children will begin to be connected to certain skills that they have, their hopes and their dreams, and just having other people also speaking into that, their peers speaking into that, was really something that they valued as precious. We are acknowledging the beautiful trees that we have in our forests. And as the facilitator or counselor, you take this opportunity to retell what has been heard from the children. The children have been telling their stories, and in the process of telling their stories, there's been an acknowledgement of skills, of abilities, of their hopes and dreams for their lives, but also a sense of being connected to people who are important to us, to important relationships, to people that have supported and so forth. So during this particular part of the exercise, as the counselor or facilitator, you then engage in a retelling. And bringing forth once again what has been heard from the children's stories, and speaking about their hopes that we've learned they have, about their skills and their abilities, about the relationships, the loved ones in their lives, and even acknowledging that some of the loved ones that we have been lost, but it does not mean that all has been lost. We have precious memories, precious lessons that we can hold on to that can sustain us in life. So part 2 is really a retelling by the counselor or facilitator, responding to what has been heard from the children. And I think I got the sense that it is really very reinforcing for the children. It really brings it out there, when they hear it said in their own words, in their own expressions, because that is what you'll be capturing. It's not your own idea about what children need to hear. It's going again to capturing their expressions, their words, and the ways that they have been talking about what they value, what they hope for their lives, and so forth and so on. So when we come to the end of the retelling, we then move to the part 3 of the Tree of Life exercise, which is the stones of life. get into this particular part, there's an acknowledgement of how beautiful the trees are, isn't it? Going back to the metaphor of trees in a forest, beautiful, strong, with roots, bearing wonderful fruit and looking very lovely, very different, but all important. And then I found that offers a very beautiful sort of entry point, not beautiful as such, but it makes it possible when children are speaking about their lives in such ways. The metaphor is very useful, because then what we did was then to talk about the trees that we've seen in our lives, and just to address the fact that, when we look at trees, would we say that trees are free from danger? If you think about the trees, the forests that we've seen in our lives, in our communities, would we say trees are free from danger? And obviously the children would respond, no, And trees are not free from danger because certain things happen to trees. As beautiful as the trees may be, as wonderful as they may be, as strong as they may be, they also face certain hazards in their lives. And I think at this point in doing this, you become so much aware of how children are standing sort of in solidarity. There's this common voice, common agreement, and voicing out together some of these hazards that are experienced in life. So I found using the metaphor as a very good sort of entry point into beginning to explore these hazards, because we started off by looking at the hazards that trees experience in life. And then you say, we've obviously been doing this exercise and we've been reflecting and thinking our lives using this metaphor of trees. And we've acknowledged that we are beautiful. We are beautiful, we are strong, we have skills, we have abilities, we have hopes for our lives and our future. But are we free from dangers and hazards of life? And the children, again, will express and say, no, we are not free. We are not free because terrible things happen to children, terrible things happen to us. And then getting into allowing children to then talk about these hazards and some of these problems and challenges that children experience in their lives. And so what stands out for me in these experiences is that it is not putting a particular child in a corner. I felt children had so much freedom to talk because it was not like targeting at me to speak about my problems and that type of thing. So it was like joining together in one voice with other children to express the challenges that children face. And I think I've been amazed at how children can actually talk about problems in ways that are not sort of defining of them. It's like talking about something and it's not necessarily me or a part of me, or it defines who I am. So there's a sense of children are speaking these things and there's a distance. There's some distance that has been created between the children's experiences and the problems that they have. These were things that were sort of standing out for me in experiencing this. And I think, as I've shared in the beginning, having a sense of coming to, from a place where I would witness children telling their lives with so much pain and anguish, And also noting that even in the context of collective, children talking about their problems in a collective way, you could tell that some of these were personal experiences. I had, particularly with this group that I worked with in Soweto, I was already, when I came in, I was notified of particular children who had specific, particular challenges, and that the counselors were saying, we've been working with this child, but she was abandoned and she's withdrawn, she's not interested in participating, and so if you find her in the group, not being a part of the experience, that is how she is. So an 11-year-old boy who had been chased away by relatives, heading a household and looking after a 7-year-old brother. So there were two children that were brought to the group with, who were sort of having challenges, and the counselors had almost resigned or accepted the fact that the children were the way they were, and they were not managing to make and to reach them. But in that experience, I was amazed about how they managed to participate. They became a part of the whole experience, and they were contributing, and they had smiles on their faces. You know, this was really important for me, because coming from what I'd heard, and also my previous experiences about, you know, children talking about their lives, it was really a shift in many ways. And so, beginning to see the value of the second story, of these islands of safety, of giving children opportunities to stand in a different place and to acknowledge that they have skills and abilities, and that it's not the total part of their lives that is tainted with troubles and problems, that their lives are not totally tainted with horrible things, but that there are other subordinate stories, and an opportunity for them to stand in a different place really came out very powerfully for me in the exercises you know, that I've actually done with the children. So children will name and talk about their problems. They're lifting their hands up, and this is what is happening to children. Children are being sexually abused, and children are being chased away from homes. Children have no food. You know, the kinds of things that we all know from our experience. But already seeing that there's a different relationship between the child and the problem, you know? There's a distance. It's no longer about my pity party, my sorry life. And that shift being such a powerful thing to actually observe. And being a part of that process, even as a facilitator, feeling energized, you know? Because the children are, you know, there's a sense of hope, there's a sense of, you know, there is life, and that also, you know, giving something to you as the person that is facilitating. So really my energy levels, the children's energy levels, the counselors' energy levels are so different. There's such a vibrance and energy that in my previous experiences I was not able to, you know, to kind of encounter and to experience. So when we talk about the storms of life, and we acknowledge that they are storms, but also the importance of talking about the fact that it is not children's fault, you know? And I remember asking the question to children to say, you know, is it children's fault that these things happen? And the children saying, no, you know, it is not our fault that these things are happening. And I think that is a very key thing to address when you're working with children, because there's always a sense of blame, and that I'm the one who caused this, or things are the way they are because of me. And so that being a very important part of that particular exercise. So we've acknowledged the storms, we've acknowledged and brought out the fact very clearly that children is not children's fault, and also then exploring what the effects of some of these problems and challenges are on children's lives, and children giving words to some of these effects. You know, your heart is sore when things like that happen to you, and you are sad, and you know, you don't do well at school. So clearly having knowledge and ideas about how they're impacted by the problems that they have in their lives. But also, as Michael has been talking, it is not adequate just to explore the problem without exploring how children have been responding. And so the next question to ask is, do children respond to these problems? Are they passive recipients of the problems that they experience in life? And can children do something? Can children do anything about the problems that they have in their lives? And the children like, oh yes, we can do something, you know? And that is such an invigorating thing to hear. Not just that I'm really subject to this and I can't move on, but children standing in a place where they feel they are able to do something, which is a shift from a sort of victim mentality where life is happening to me and I'm just sitting in a corner and receiving and being thrown left, right, and center. So experiencing that with the children and really talking about how do children respond to these things. And I got to learn about the knowledge and the information that children have about what they can do about their problems. I mean, the ideas were many, you know. Almost every child had something to say about what can be done. And this again is beginning to unpack their own skills and knowledges. and not standing there to say, okay, you've been abused, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do, and sort of, having that approach where you are telling and you are the expert. But allowing children to really speak out and say how they are addressing the injustices and the problems that they have in their lives. And I heard a lot about how children talk to friends, how they pray about the problems, how they talk to the local counsellor, how it's been helpful to have a social worker and to talk to the local policeman. There were many, many, many ideas about how children respond. And again, coming to a point of acknowledging and being clear that children know, which is so different. Like, we have to tell, we have to give them, but so much of a wealth of experience and knowledge in terms of what needs to be or what can be done. So again, those were some of the most amazing experiences for me in this journey of using the tree of life the way it is. So the response is so important. It's so important because children have gone through talking about their problems, but having that sense that I can do something. I can get up and talk to somebody, and even learning ideas from other children as they are voicing the different ideas about what can be done. Very critical and important in terms of this particular work. So this is what the Storms of Life exercise does. It allows us to explore the problem, but also it allows us to begin to speak and to hear about the children's skills, about the children's knowledges, in terms of how they are already responding to the different challenges that they have in their lives. And then it becomes important also to pose the question related to, but are there always problems in our lives? Are there always storms, Going back to the metaphor, do we experience storms every single day of our lives? And clearly, that metaphor being helpful even for children to appreciate that storms are not every day. There are times and there are days and seasons in our life when we are actually free from storms. And it's not every single day, every single part of our lives that are tainted with those storms. And I remember giving the children opportunities to get into groups and just to talk about that, in their small groups, about the times that they are not experiencing storms in their lives, and just thinking about the things that they are doing. What kinds of things are we doing in our lives together when we are free from storms? And so it was almost a celebration, an acknowledgement of the fact that life is not all bad. Life is just not problem-saturated. There's space for joyful things. There's space for good times. There's space for lots of wonderful things to happen in our families, to happen in our communities. So again, that was a very powerful acknowledgement. And looking at the children's body language, even to this point of the exercise, where they've gone through looking at some of the real problems. As I've said, some of the children in the group, you could tell that they're talking about being displaced and not having a place to live. But at this stage, you're still feeling the positive energy. You are sensing that children are excited, and there's a hope that you almost experience in the whole group. Lots of positive and invigorating energy. So coming to those conclusions again about that life is not always tainted with bad things, and that there is space when we are free. Also very important knowledge is to bring to the surface. So once we have done that and we've come to that point of responding, can also become an important question to even to talk about, having had and acknowledge the fact that children have hopes and skills that they have in their lives, and even just exploring how they manage to keep those hopes and skills alive in difficult times, What kind of actions, what kind of things do they do to protect what is important and what is special for them, what it is that they value, and how they've managed to, just to keep going, even when times are very difficult, because as has been acknowledged earlier, they are there, and that means something, that stands for something. So that part of the tree of exploring storms just doesn't end with the storms and the troubles, but it brings in the responses, it brings in an acknowledgement of the fact that life is not always filled with storms. These lessons, these learnings call for a celebration, don't they? There's almost, an invitation just to celebrate life and to celebrate the second story, to celebrate the hope, to celebrate the skills that have been, uncovered, that have been unveiled, and that the children have come to experience during this whole exercise. And so this brings us to the fourth part of the exercise, that is the certificate. Yeah? The Tree of Life certificate. And my lovely friend Stan Watt designed the certificate, but I noted it as fun. I need to remove it and take it away. But this was a beautiful certificate that was developed by a friend of mine called Stan Watt before he left for Canada. He quickly put something together before the exercise that we did with the children. And I've used Loveness and Spelile, this tree, as an example of how the certificate would read. But basically, as the exercise is going on, because I was working in this particular context with the counselors that were already working with the children, as the children speak about their skills and they speak about their abilities, the counselors were involved in sort of jotting down and taking notes about what they were learning from each child, because this would be important information that would go into the certificate. So we have a certificate that is awarded to Loveness Chirwa, that is the name of the child, for proving to herself and others that she has skills and abilities that have and continue to sustain her in her life. She also has special people in her life and has special dreams and hope for her future. And her skills and abilities include caring for others, cleaning, sewing, and whatever else the child may have identified. And her hopes and dreams are to be a businesswoman and to get married and to have children, to please her mother, who wanted her to have a good life. And then also, she would like to appreciate the following people in her life: her mother, her teacher, her friend Spelile, and Granny. All right? So this would be sort of the certificate that almost embraces what has come out of the Tree of Life. And there's an opportunity at the end, as you see here with the children, an awarding of this particular certificate. And what we did is we invited people who were at the clinic, because we're doing this in a sort of clinic center, and we're able to invite a handful of people, about 10 people, who came to participate in this certificate giving ceremony. I tell you, it was such a special experience for the children. And for some of them, it was the first time to get a certificate and to be acknowledged, to come up front and to have people acknowledge and to embrace you. And I remember she spoke about how the certificate would serve as a reminder to her about the hopes and dreams that she has for her life and that she has a future. So she was saying, I would put it up in my wall in my bedroom, and it would remind me of the fact that I have a hope for the future. So this would end with a song. We've dreamt for a long time to come up with a Tree of Life song, which we have not achieved at the moment, but obviously the children had suggestions and ideas about a song that they'd like to sing at the ceremony. Very beautiful, very nice, very encouraging, and ending the experience on a very high note, and children taking away something that they could, always have to capture, the essence of the experience. But also with working with the counselors, we had a discussion about sometimes, the challenges that we have in our work that relate to sometimes having had this wonderful experience with the children, but thinking about what's going to happen home. Will the people understand? Will they know? How do we bridge the gap between experiences that children have in a group setting together and what their parents or caregivers know and understand about their lives? So what we did is then we invited every child to write a letter. To write a letter to their caregiver or someone special at home. And it reads, today we did a very nice thing. It is called the Tree of Life. In the tree, I say that I want to grow up to be a mechanic. You know that I love fixing things. Like the day on Monday, I fixed the TV. I think that's meant to be the TV when it was not working. If I'm a mechanic, I'll be like my father because he used to fix lights. And then it says Gogo, which is granny. I want to grow up to be strong so that I can take care of you and Sandy. And then it says Gogo, thank you for the new uniform that you bought for sorry. Gogo, thank you for the new uniform that you bought for me and the nice things that you get for us always. You are good and special. And then it says, I invite you to support group. Yeah? And I think we acknowledge that some of the caregivers may be illiterate, and then we encourage the children to go back and read the letter and explain what the letter says. So this was really trying to narrow the gap in terms of children experiences and their parents and caregivers experiences, as well as the Tree of Life. That's something to take home and also to share with the rest of the members of the family. At this point, can I say thank you? This is the Tree of Life exercise. Trying to just bring narrative ideas and work with them in our context, in our local context, in our own experiences in the same groups, but trying to see how we can make experiences more meaningful for children. Yeah. Thank you. Love you.
Asante sana, asante sana, asante.